Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week.
We don't want Scotsman here. Are you watching it?
We're going? Bolton? Yeah.
You're crying later. Unfortunately, it is what it is.
Some people may not know this, but Celtic mobs over the years have faced some of the best English football hooligan firms of that era, such as Birmingham Zulus, Leeds Service Crew, and Burnley Suicide Squad, to name a few. We are going to listen to true accounts of what happened when Celtic went to battle against these firms, from respected people that was actually there. This isn't gossip, this isn't myth, this is factual information that you may not have heard before. Let's start with when Celtic faced Leeds Service Crew. Firstly, we will listen to Leeds' point of view, and then we will listen to a man I have a lot of respect for, the one and only John O'Kane. This is what Leeds said about Celtic. The next day, Leeds played Celtic in Glasgow, in a friendly in front of a crowd of 50,000. About 300 to 400 lads went for a big piss-up, including Gaz P fresh from his court appearance, dressed in a smart jumper, slacks and slip-on leather shoes. When asked why he was dressed in such a straight manner, he said, "I'm dressing differently now. I'm not getting dragged into this anymore." As they walked down the road, three big Celtic fans came round a corner and went straight up to Gaz and said, "All right, mate, are you the Leeds Service Crew and one of their famous casuals?" He wasn't happy, but everyone else was killing themselves, laughing. Later, Eddie, the good Catholic boy that he is, stood in the middle of a packed car park by the ground, surrounded by Celtic fans, and shouted, "Freedom!" The general response was, "Fuck off, you English bastard." That was just a brief snippet from Leeds Service Crew. There was more, but I want to focus on John O'Kane and his point of view. John was a prominent member of the Celtic Soccer Crew and has been there, bought the t-shirt, done the bird. He has an excellent book out about the Celtic football casual scene at the height of football hooliganism. Here is his book. It is available on Amazon, and I highly recommend it. Anyway, here is John's version of events against Leeds. The following are all his own words. The Leeds incident in the year 1998 was the last significant battle that the Celtic Soccer Crew were involved in during the 1990s. The activities of most firms, not just in Scotland, but throughout the British Isles, had decreased dramatically, and some firms existed in name only. A lot of older lads had retired from football violence for a number of reasons. I tend to believe that most of them quite simply grew up, and now found themselves with commitments, such as mortgages, careers and families. The last thing that any of them needed was the added pressure of being arrested at the football. As for me, I moved into a new house with my girlfriend and our son Sean in the year 1999. I was working as an auxiliary nurse in a nursing home. I now had my own responsibilities and was enjoying my work and family life. It was a pre-season friendly and we didn't have a mob out before the game. I was in a pub near Glasgow Cross, standing at the bar close to the doors. I was actually talking to an older guy who was my dad's postman, when all of a sudden the doors came flying open and various missiles like bottles and bricks began to rain in, one of which struck an old man, bursting open a gaping wound on his forehead. Most of the punters ran to back of the pub to seek refuge, whilst myself and the landlord tried to hold back the mob that were trying to get in. However, the ones who managed to get in weren't Leeds. There were a few Rangers who had obviously tagged on. After a couple of minutes, we heard the police sirens and the mob fled. I then noticed that my jacket had a couple of slash marks where obviously they had attacked me with a knife. I was absolutely fuming, as were the locals and landlord. I immediately set out going round all the local pubs to round up as many people as possible for the Leeds mob returning after the game. This was the area known in Glasgow as the Barras. The pub was Mulvey's. The whole Barras and Gallowgate had about a dozen pubs, most of which could be regarded as Celtic-minded, with many of the locals, although not casuals, would be regarded as hard men. I returned to Mulvey's, and slowly but surely it began to fill up. Not just our mob, but some of the local hard men who weren't going to allow a mob to claim victory on their turf. We numbered about 70 to 80, with many armed with various weapons such as pool cues, baseball bats and golf clubs. We had a few taxi drivers out to keep the lookout for the Leeds mob. We got the call that they were approaching. We waited until they were almost outside before charging out of the doors. They absolutely shat themselves and began scattering in all directions. However, some weren't so quick and received quite a beating. This went on for quite some time, in football violence terms. Before the police arrived to restore order, I haven't come across or read anything from the Leeds mob about this incident. Maybe it's one they would rather forget. I certainly won't. So that was John talking about a battle with Leeds Service Crew. There is more to tell, but again, you would have to read the book Celtic Soccer Crew for more about that battle. Now, for me, Birmingham Zulus were one of the best football firms that England have produced. They were feared and respected, and all the best firms have come unstuck in Birmingham, if they dared to even show up. Not Celtic. Not only did their casuals turn up, but they turned up in force, and I'm not sure the Zulus was expecting what happened. However, if you are a Birmingham City fan and you was there, or know what happened and would like to give your opinion, then please do so in the comment section. Your input is welcomed. Always. Anyway, let's listen to John O'Kane's take on the Birmingham Zulus. Birmingham was in August 1995. We set off on the Friday night, only a dozen or so top boys in a minibus. We arrived in the Digbeth area of Birmingham. Just as pubs opened on Saturday morning, we set up base in a pub called the Dubliner and awaited the arrival of more of our crew, with lads arriving from all over the UK, swelling our mob to about 40 to 50 good lads. This included a couple of lads from the group Birmingham Red Action. We also had a few hundred Celtic fans in the area. Although we didn't rely on them, there was always a few of them who would be up for a battle if need be. We heard rumours that Birmingham Zulu warriors were planning to attack us, so we placed several bottles and other weapons strategically outside the pub and awaited the Brummy boys. At around 2 p.m, we heard a chant of Zulu Zulu getting louder as their firm came round the bend downhill towards the bullring of Digbeth High Street. We steadied ourselves and spread out across the road. To our amazement, their charge stopped about 20 to 30 yards in front of us. And although we were vastly outnumbered, this was the signal for us to steam in, throwing the volley of bottles and other missiles we had. I couldn't believe that the Birmingham lads made very little effort to stand and were soon all on their toes. To give you some idea of how far we advanced up Digbeth High Street, I was arrested about 100 yards from the Dubliner pub. My mate had shouted to me, "Watch out," as a copper's truncheon came crashing down on my shoulders, knocking me to the ground. I was dragged into a police minibus, which already had another Celtic boy inside, struggling violently with a couple of coppers. Meanwhile, the copper who had knocked me to the ground was being a bit enthusiastic with his truncheon and was about to smack me over the head. However, I was on the step into the minibus, giving me height advantage, and I was able to dodge the truncheon and land a Glasgow kiss, knocking him down. After a bit of scuffling, we and Mick were restrained before being taken to the cells beneath the stands of St Andrew's Stadium. They held us there until after the game, where we were joined by another one of our crew who had got arrested inside the stadium. We were taken to Aston Station, where we were held until court on the Monday. On arrival at court, I wasn't duly worried after seeing the duty solicitor, who assured me that I would get bail, which I did. However, my joy was short-lived, as I had warrants out for unpaid fines and found myself on the bus to Winson Green Nick to do the few days for my fines. Mick was also taken to the jail, as his address hadn't been verified, resulting in him being remanded. I was only in Winson Green jail until the Friday. A few months later, I received a summons to attend trial in Birmingham. The lawyer I had was too optimistic and said I would most certainly receive a hefty prison sentence if found guilty. However, the coppers totally effed up. The second officer took the witness stand and asked to read from her notebook. Her evidence was almost word for word of the first officer, making it clear that she had merely copied his notes, which prompted my lawyer to ask how she knew my name. She replied. The first officer informed her. My lawyer asked that if the first officer had said I was John Smith, she would identify me as John Smith. At this point, the judge said that I think we should halt proceedings, apologise to me, and awarding me and my two witnesses court costs, which came to a few £100 each. As for the Birmingham mob, I heard that they weren't too pleased, and apparently the mob who had tried to attack us was mainly their younger boys. Seemingly, they took a few liberties with Celtic fans after the game. That was from John O'Kane. But I would like to now go over another witness statement account from another Celtic fan that was in Birmingham for the game, and this is what he said. The pre-season friendly match against Birmingham City, Blues was marred by the antics of the Blues fans and other supporters of Midlands clubs and their fascist mates who think that the Irish, and they see Celtic fans as very definitely Irish, are easy meat. It's ironic that this violence should occur in Birmingham, where a recent survey found that 1 in 3 of the city's population were either Irish or of Irish descent. It therefore follows that Birmingham has 3 Celtic supporters clubs, and many members make regular trips to see the boys. Tau also has huge support within these clubs, with a good number of fanzines being sold to the local Celts. Rumours began to circulate in the weeks before the match that Brum's Irish Quarter in Digbeth was going to be attacked by an alliance of the Blues firm and fascists from the BNP and CIS. Their intended targets would be the Irish pubs in the area and the Celtic fans who would be drinking there. None of us wanted to see Celtic fans turned over by this mob, so we let Tau, Anti-Fascist Action, Red Action, and the Celtic Soccer Crew know about the possibilities. An alliance was formed for the day in order to defend the Digbeth area and our supporters, should it be necessary. Lots of fans had been drinking in Digbeth the previous evening, and the locals were well pleased with their friendly behaviour. On the Saturday, it was much the same, with people enjoying the usual amounts of beer and crack. We had no intention of going looking for trouble, but if the rumours were true, we weren't going to sit back and see our supporters battered. The other thing that is important is that it isn't just the Celtic fans that such attacks are aimed at. Football fans can bounce back from just about anything. The attack would also serve the purpose of intimidating Birmingham's whole Irish community. The Irish in Brum have had to put up with a lot of shit since the pub bombings, and have only just begun to come out of their ghettos again, so we were not going to lie down and let this scum walk all over us. At about 10 in the morning, a couple of 100 lads turned the corner. Something told us that they were not interested in sampling the Guinness. They charged at us, but much to their surprise and horror, the Celtic fans only hesitated. Our supporters quickly grouped up and countercharged the Blues fans, resulting in them being slapped all over the place, which spread a great buzz among the Celts. Another mob tried to attack us from a side street, but, again, they were ran. They then decided to seek refuge behind the lines of police who had quickly appeared, and our attackers showed their true colours by Sieg Heiling us and singing their favourite ditty of the moment, "No Surrender to the IRA." All this after being chased off and then hiding behind the cops. What was that about no surrender? The Celtic casuals answered this with a chant of BNP wank wank wank. This went some way towards letting the black lads from the Birmingham Zulus know that our fight was not against them, but against the fascists and loyalists whose intentions are to smash the Irish. Many Celtic fans were surprised to see black guys fighting on the same side as the Nazis. Why be so shocked that the Zulus should fall for the same anti-Irish crap that is absorbed by most England fans? They weren't giving Nazi salutes like the others, but they were up for the row and therefore suffered the same fate as their fair weather friends. It's disappointing, but hopefully the Zulus will have learned to choose their friends more carefully in future. I remember, well, in the early 80s, how Villa NF supporters used to put stickers around the Holt end saying Villa shits on black Zulus. Yet, against Celtic, the Zulus were prepared to fight on the same side as the Villa fascists. Some of our own fans were slagging the Celtic casuals, saying that they were only there looking for trouble. We would like to make it clear that these lads were well disciplined throughout the day, and but for them, it would have been a massacre. Instead, Celtic fans fought back and won. And it wasn't just casuals that fought. There were loads of guys wearing the hoops and scarves who steamed into the fascists. We are proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with the casuals who have shown by their recent actions that they are proud to defend the anti-fascist stance of the Celtic supporters. They are Republicans and they hate the fascists. They also believe, like us, that the sort of direct action which took place in Birmingham is the best way to stop the fascists. It's important that all of our supporters recognise that whilst they may not share our militant sentiments, you don't stand and point out people to the police when they have just saved you from having your throat cut. The days of the anti-casual hooligan chants are long gone. These guys are anti-fascists and should be applauded for their actions in Birmingham. So, that was the point of view from another Celtic lad, and it's interesting that he was surprised that the Zulus wanted to attack Celtic, because Celtic lads themselves fight against racism. The Zulus are a firm made up of black and Asian lads, and actually a couple of their top faces were Irish back then, so it could well have been Aston Villa that the Celtic lads faced off against. Again, if you know any more details about this encounter, then please let us know in the comment section. I think viewers would be interested. Al, this was decades ago. I think right now, current day, there are actually rumours of a bit of a connection between the Zulus and Celtic. And when Celtic played Villa in the Champions League recently, Celtic was welcomed to Birmingham by the Zulus. Again, if you know any details about that, let us know in the comment section. Anyway, finally let us move on to Burnley. This time, the whole witness account is from the Burnley Suicide Squad point of view. I would love to hear the Celtic witness accounts about this battle, but had trouble finding any, so I have had to use the Burnley version of events. But if any Celtic lad would like to set the record straight, then please do so in the comment section. Right. The following is all the actual words from a very well-known Burnley casual. This is what he had to say. This was the big one, or at least the first big one. It was the holidays, and I had just come back from camping with my mates, Mick, Nick and Hosker. We got some food together, and sleeping bags and tents, and went up to Hurstwood Reservoir. It pissed down non-stop, but we still had a laugh. Mick Nick nearly killed us putting the burner on in the tent. He fell asleep and knocked it over and set his sleeping bag on fire, but as it was raining heavily, no real harm was done. We stuck it out till Tuesday morning and then set off early to Burnley. It was about 5 miles away, so I got home about 10 o'clock, had some breakfast and a bath, then set off to Hosker's and Mick's. Walking out of my house, I was amazed to see Celtic fans already arriving in cars, even though the match was an evening fixture. I went to Hosker's and we saw some Celtic fans on the rec kicking a football about with loads of beer around them on the floor. We then went to Mick's house near the Butterfly pub, where there were loads more Celtic, and it was only midday. All the pubs were packed with Celtic fans, even in the town centre. Green and white shirts were everywhere, and every Scot carried booze of some description. Some clutched bottles of sherry and were already pissed out of their heads and flat out on the pavement. All the windows of the Swan pub went through before Celtic fans staggered out. There didn't seem to be any Burnley fans around, but it was only early. 4 o'clock came, and as I walked up Todmorden Road back to Burnley Wood, coach after coach went past, each with Celtic fans holding cans or bottles. There were coaches from all over, Leeds, Newcastle, Sheffield and Derby. I was looking forward to this game. Mick Hosker and I tried to get to our usual spot on the long side, but there was no way. It was heaving, so we made do with standing at the bottom next to the fence, where there was no mesh roof to protect. Before the teams came out, the cans and bottles filled with piss started flying over the fence. I remember the cans had pictures of girls on them. They were Tennant's lager cans, the first time I had seen one of those tins. The teams came out, and there was a big battle for the B-hole end, into the long side. The battle went huge. We couldn't watch the game because of all the madness, so I decided to climb up a drain pipe. It had super bracing around it, so it was easy to climb. When I was about 10 feet up, I had a great view of the ground and the game. I could see everything. Cans were hitting the drain pipe, but lower down, I was safe for now. A big gap opened up in the fence between the B-hole and longside ends, and Celtic fans ran across the gap in numbers. Fists and feet flew, and the picture scene was unbelievable. Heavy mobs of Celtic fighting for funnel and control. The song would go up every now and again, "We'll never take the long side." Then battle would commence again. Burnley fans tried to push into the B-hole, where they were met and pushed back into the long side. Half-time came and went. No one noticed the teams leaving and returning to the pitch. "Aggression, aggression," went the chant, a chant taken up after World Cup campaign Scotland had just had in Argentina. Now, the Celtic fans behind the fence were going mental trying to get over again, and the over-enthusiastic police had to retreat across the terraces. Everything was caving over the fences. The air was full of glass and piss. Celtic fans started climbing the fence, pushing the men apart and actually managing them off. Police returned to the pitch. They couldn't stand along the front of the fence as someone had got in. The Celtic fans poured through after them over 10 minutes or so, throwing kicks and punches through it. It was clear to me it was going to turn into one gigantic free-for-all. Then, when it dragged on and people went over, the Celtic fans started using the support of railings as weapons, pulling through the fence and stabbing at anyone and everyone. Burnley fans were trying to move away from the fence, but they were running into battles at the B-hole end. All hell broke loose there as the railings started flying through the air. One lad, just by there where I was struck on the ankle by a railing that came out of nowhere, and he hit the floor straight away. He stood up, got up, but couldn't, so some others gave him a hand. The railing went back over the fence only to be thrown straight back again. The fighting in the B-hole truly intensified. We were making progress, but not enough, and finally the pressure broke through on both sides of the longside gate, and everyone went on to the pitch. Fighting carried on in the centre circle and penalty area, and people were jumping into the stands to get out of the way. Mick and Hosker managed to get onto the little local area, as far as I couldn't get off the pitch. The problem was that all Burnley's ends were invaded, and the fans above the pitch were only being a steel barrier, also used to channel. There were people all around me fighting. Police horses were galloping around, pushing the fans onto the terraces. I ran and jumped up to get hold of the barrier on the B-hole end, but there was no way. I was pretty safe squeezed against the rails as Burnley were getting pushed off the pitch. Suddenly, the mass of arms and hands were grabbing at my ears and shoulders. I was being lifted. It felt like I was out in a boat, then was swiftly climbing over onto a step in the stand. Finally, I could stand nearest the edge and could see cops of hands and policemen still pushing people off the pitch. I looked out onto the new thin field area. It was empty. The terraces, both nearly Orange Square Rangers. Was alright, bruh, eh? No, thought you were a goner. I told them I was okay, but I noticed one of my mates crying. The pitch was finally cleared, and the police made Burnley fans back into match level, as left-wing sections were well back to the border of Longside. I walked against the perimeter fence of the wing. The battle of the beehole end had subsided a bit, and I managed to get through people's legs. And there, stuck in the back walling, the floor was covered in glass and hundreds upon hundreds of Celtic scarves woven on there. Police must have brought in reinforcements because there were 2 lines now in front of the Burnley fans and in front of the Celtic fans for the first time all night. The game finished and Burnley were actual. Jimmy Kindon scored, I think, but no one was bothered about the game. A defiant, "You'll never take the long side," went up. I was pissed. Burnley fought that night like nothing I'd ever seen before or since on a football ground. Afterwards, all the Burnley lads moved as one down Briarcliff Road. Most of the Celtic fans didn't want to know. They were off to get themselves home. That night remains etched in my mind. The police were rounding Celtic vehicles outside, and the word got out that the police had large numbers and large backup, all equipped with batons. The large roundabout to the other side of the road meant that all Burnley fans were contained to that side, most using the subway that leads to the bus station. The Celtic fans had used the subway, and as they walked up the ramp out of the subway, singing and shouting, the Burnley fans pounced. There was fierce fighting and Burnley gained some defeats. The police arrived, and I had seen enough. I walked up to the canal, then another 200 yards, and I was home. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to watch the video. If you enjoyed it and want to support the channel, then the best way is to subscribe. Give the video a like and share it to like-minded friends. Thank you again. See you next time. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you subscribe, you will be notified when we release a new video. It could be your firm we make a video about next, so don't miss out and hit the subscribe button. You can find me on Facebook or email me if you have a good story to tell. See you next time.